Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I'm from executeautomation.com and welcome to the all new video series of our automated build deploy test with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium. And this is part of our ALM with Team Foundation Server video series. And in this video series, we'll be actually talking about build, deploy and test. That is the full focus of this video series. So I would request you to have a clear understanding of Team Foundation Server 2015 before watching this video series, because this video series is completely going to be just focusing on build, deploy and test. Well, what are we really going to discuss in this video series then? The agenda of this video series is this. We can talk about the introduction to Team Foundation Server 2015 build, deploy and test, and what is TFS 2015 and TFS 2015 build system and TFS deployment system and TFS test system, both distributed and cloud. We'll also talk about automated build, deploy, test workflow with Team Foundation Server 2015 in a little detail. And we'll also talk about building of our application and testing our application using the Selenium framework using the team system. So we'll actually do that with our existing application, which is nothing but our employee app, and also testing the application using our existing automation testing framework, which we developed, which is nothing but our EA test framework. So we'll be using that, and we'll be checking into the team system, and that is the build process. So we'll be doing that. And then we'll be doing deploying of our application using Team Foundation Server in both local and in the remote machine. So here we'll be using a little distributed environment setup in our machine so that we'll be deploying our application, which is nothing but our web application, in an internet information server, both in a local as well as in a remote machine. And as that said, the final most important thing which we'll be doing is testing the deployed application using Team Foundation Server and Selenium. Again, we'll be using Selenium automation testing tool for testing our web application, which we are deploying in our internet information server, both in remote as well as in the local machine. So this is the small agenda of what we're going to really discuss in this video series. So I hope you will enjoy this video series. So thank you very much for watching this video and have a great day. Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I am from executeautomation.com and welcome to Automated Build, Deploy, Test with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium video series. And this video series is part of our ALM with Team Foundation Server video series. And in this video, we'll be talking about introduction. So in this introduction, we'll be talking about introduction to Team Foundation Server 2015 build, deploy and test process, and what is Team Foundation Server 2015, its build system, deployment system and test system, both in distributed as well as cloud. Well, note that in this video we'll be just talking about the introduction of these systems, not as a full practical way of doing it, but it's just an introduction. What is this build, deploy and test altogether? So you can use a build, deploy, test workflow on Team Foundation Server 2015 to deploy and test your application when you run a build. Actually, you can do this in your XAML build as well, but the introduction of your 2015 Team Foundation Server has got something called vNext build, or otherwise called as a workflow way of doing your build system, where you can actually create your build definitions much easier in a web application of your Team Foundation Server itself, instead of doing that in your Visual Studio. And this lets you schedule and run the build, deployment, testing of your applications with one build process, which is much easier. And build, deploy, test workflow works with lab management to deploy your application to a lab environment and run tests on them as a part of the build process. Well, here I'm saying lab management to deploy your application. So remember, there is a SEVMM setup in Microsoft Visual Studio Test Manager, where you can have your test machines configured with your SEVMM or as an Hyper-V, where you can also clean the application every time you run the test, and the machine will be in a pretty new state. And once the test starts, it reimages the machines, it deploys the application as well as the test code in there and runs the test. It's kind of very interesting if you work with a lab management, but in this video series I really don't have such kind of hardwares and power to do that. Rather, I'm going to use Hyper-V version, which is again much similar to what we can do with the lab management. But here I will have my own setup. We will be doing much exactly like a lab management, but here, as I said, it's going to be just a Hyper-V, right? We'll talk about that later in upcoming videos. So this is another way of deploying your application in a remote machine. And this process of deploying the application into a remote machine, testing the application and building the application, all are otherwise called as DevOps operations. And so it will have a planning, it will have a continuous deliveries, development and testing and analytics, both in development as well as in productions. So this image is actually taken from Microsoft website, so it is not something which I designed. Introduction to Team Foundation Server. Of course, I'm not going to really introduce the Team Foundation Server 2015 because in our ExecuteAutomation.com we have already discussed Team Foundation Server in QA and dev focused video series. So if you want, you can learn all of them from there. Similarly, introduction to Team Foundation Server build system, which is nothing but the vNext build as well as the XAML build system. So if you ask me whether I'm going to tell that, of course not, because TFS 2015 build system is again a new playlist which I created where you can see how to work with Team Foundation Server build systems, how to set the environment ready for XAML builds, and how to create the build definitions, and how to install the agent pools, creating and executing build definitions with the vNext build in Team Foundation Server 2015. So all these videos are already available in our Execute Automation channels of YouTube. So you can go ahead and watch that. And then Team Foundation Server build deployment is also done in one of the video of the build system, but here we'll be discussing a little more elaborate because that's where our Selenium automation kicks in, because we need to run our automated test in that remote machine. So we'll actually use that. So TFS build deployment can be done with hosted pool as well as hosted build controller. So this hosted pool is otherwise called as the vNext build definition, where you will have a agent, and this agent can be configured with any of the managed pools, and whichever agent is available, the managed pool will automatically take that and run the test. But whereas in XAML build, there is something called as a agent and controller model available, where it is otherwise called as the hosted build controller. And there you should have a definite agent and controller setup. So meaning if you're going to run 3 builds altogether, then you should have 3 build agents and 1 controller, right? So that's again we discussed in our Team Foundation Server build system. So you can actually go ahead in the YouTube channel of Execute Automation to learn more about it. Right, so this is the build deployment using Team Foundation Server. And TFS test, what is this? Which is very, very interesting and exciting in Team Foundation Server 2015 because it actually supports a lot of testing frameworks like Gradle, NUnit, XUnit.net, Node.js, Maven, JUnit, and Selenium, which is pretty exciting. And we will actually do a lot of steps with this. So this diagram actually shows you that you can do test planning, you can do automated testing, manual testing, and exploratory testings in that. And also you can do acceptance, load, and automated testing. At the same time, you can send the feedback as a report. And this 2015 of Team Foundation Server has brought a new cloud testing, which is nothing but a cloud load testing, which is pretty interesting and exciting. We'll also talk about that. This is what Team Foundation Server 2015 defines for testing part as a continuous delivery, right? And these are the steps which we'll be discussing about in this video series, right? So I think you guys have excited about it. So thank you very much for watching this video and have a great day. Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I am from ExecuteAutomation.com and welcome to Automated Build, Deploy, Test with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium video series. And this video series is part of our ALM with Team Foundation Server video series. And in this video, we'll be talking about Automated Build, Deploy, Test workflow with Team Foundation Server 2015. So the environment prerequisite is one of the exciting and most complex and most important part while working with Team Foundation Server 2015 in a distributed as well as the on-premises way? Well, there is one more way of doing it, like on cloud, which is otherwise called as the team system, which we will not be talking about because that's something managed by Microsoft itself. So that environment you don't really even care about. But this is what is pretty important, where you're going to host the Team Foundation server in your premises, in your local environment. So the environment setup is pretty important. So how complex is the environment setup? Well, the architecture of our Team Foundation server while working with your server and client model is going to look something like this. You will have a build agent, and it will have build definitions, of course, and it will have some workflow, like which application you're going to build, which test you're going to execute, what kind of test adapter you're going to use, and which machine you're going to deploy, and all those stuffs. So this workflow will be defined in this particular machine, the one which you're seeing here. And then once the build is done, it should be dropped into a location, right? That's called as a drop location. It can be any machine. It can be a local build server machine, or it can be a remote machine as well, which can be accessed from any team across the world. And this drop location will have the web application and the web app test.dll. So this is the DLL which you actually use for testing your application, right? And then you will have a lab environment. Remember the lab environment which we were discussing in the previous video of this video series. So that lab environment will have one more build agent, and that will have a web application as well as the deployment script. And you'll be wondering here why there are two build agents. One is in the lab environment and one more in the build agent somewhere else. Well, this build agent which you are seeing in the lab environment is a remote machine, which can be even a Hyper-V machine, which can be any number of machines which executes your test and the applications, meaning the end product of your application. That's where your actual application will be deployed and the test will be run against it. So this build agent is something which is responsible for actually building your source code into a compiled application and dropping that compiled application into the drop folder, right? That's the complete difference between these two build agents, right? And there will be a web client which will actually do one more deployment of web script and also running the web app test. And of course, this is coming from here, right? So this is the architecture. So after seeing this architecture, you'll be wondering how the environment setup will be. So for Server 2012 R2 on-prem setup, the actual prerequisite is something like this. You will have a Team Foundation Server 2015. You should have it. And then you should have a SQL Server 2014 installed in the machine, which is nothing but in the server machine. And of course, you should have Windows Server R2, right? And with a service pack, which is preferred. And then you should have .NET 4.6.1 version, because with the Team Foundation Server 2015 update 1, you will actually have to have .NET 4.6.1. Even if you don't have, it will automatically install for you, right? So this is the actual on-prem setup where you'll actually host your Team Foundation server. So if you're going to execute your test in a remote machine, which can be a Hyper-V machine, then for distributed setup or the Hyper-V setup, you should also have the following with your server and with your client. So in the server, you should actually have a Active Directory setup, which can actually talk with your distributed clients, which is running in your Hyper-V. And then you should have a DHCP, which is nothing but the Dynamic Host Client Protocol enabled, so that you can have a IP address assigned for the remote machines. And then you should have a DNS, which is nothing but the domain naming server service enabled in that in the Server 2012 machine. And then you should also have Hyper-V ready, because without Hyper-V, this, of course, the setup itself cannot be done on a Hyper-V machine. And then you should have a Windows 8.1 as a guest machine in Hyper-V. And I have mentioned Windows 8.1 as a guest machine in Hyper-V is the reason is because Team Foundation Server 2015 is pretty much new, and it expects most of the new components in the operating system. So if you install Windows 7 as the guest machine, then you will have to have some additional DLLs required, or some additional packages required to be installed in the guest machine, so which is kind of nagging. That's why I say Windows 8.1 is the best candidate for the guest machine in Hyper-V. And then you should also have a setup network with Windows 8.1. Make sure you have internet connectivity required for installing that test agent, because the test agent is something which is going to run in our guest machine, so that once the application is deployed in the guest machine, this test agent should execute in there, right? So this setup is also required for the network in Windows 8.1 guest machine. And again, you should also have .NET 4.6.1 for test agent 2015 update 1 installation, right? And then you should also enable the PS remoting. So the command is enable PS remoting in PowerShell for remote execution, because some of the PowerShell script which is going to be executed from your Team Foundation server should be executed in your remote Windows 8.1 machine. So if you don't enable this, you will actually end up into a problem. So these are some of the problems which I actually faced while working with this distributed setup. That's why I'm just giving you a heads up. Maybe while you start to set up your distributed environment, these things are the checklist for you to start working with, and make sure that these things are ready for you so that you can start working with the same setup which I'm going to show you in this video series, right? And also make sure that you set up the firewall to have communication with the server and client, and enable the port in firewall inbound rules. So if you don't enable the inbound rules, some of the ports which is executed for talking with the Windows RM, which is nothing but the WinRM, and the SQL server, and some of the port for communicating with the Team Foundation server which is running in the server R2 will actually not execute. So enable the ports in the firewall inbound rules. And also install IIS and SQL Server Express at least in the Windows 8.1 guest machine. So if you don't install, then probably if your application is actually a ASP.NET application where it requires a IIS and SQL Server, then of course you should have them, right? That's pretty meaningful. So these are the distributed setup which I have for you to show in this video series. So if you're going to work with a ASP.NET application and you're going to deploy that in a remote machine and then start spinning up your test with Selenium, then please make sure that you have these setups, right? So this is the actual prerequisite for having this build, deploy, test with Team Foundation Server 2015 in your machine. So if you don't have these setups, then I'm sorry that you cannot actually give a try in your laptop or in your desktop machines. So without this, pretty hard. So if you actually have a server setup like this, then you're very good to go. And I think you can do exactly what I'm doing in this video series, right? So that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video and have a great day. Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I'm from ExecutiveAutomation.com, and welcome to part 3 of our automated build deployment test with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium. And this video is part of our ALM with Team Foundation Server video series. And in this video, we'll be talking about building our application and Selenium framework check-in to team system, which is the part 1. Basically, I have split this into 2 parts, which is nothing but part 1 and part 2, since this video is a little bigger than compared to other videos. Alright, so before watching this part, I would request you to watch part 1 and 2, since this part is going to be a continuation of that part. So for doing the building of our application and Selenium framework check-in in Team Foundation Server, let's flip to Visual Studio. So this is Visual Studio 2015, and I have already checked in my code in Team Explorer. And if you see my source control explorer, you can actually see that I have a employee web application project, and within this employee web application team project, I actually have the employee application, which is nothing but our execute auto employee application. And also I have checked in the EA employee test and EA employee test project. So this EA test project is actually the framework of our execute automation, where you can actually execute the Selenium test cases. And this EA employee test is actually the test cases which executes the test for our execute auto employee application. And there is also a PF web service. It's nothing but the web service of our application, which you can actually see how the web service is actually running behind the scenes. So this is actually a project which is part of our execute auto employee. So this check-in and check-out of our Team Foundation server, how it works, all those things we have already discussed in our Team Foundation server with QA and dev focused video series of our YouTube channel. So please go there and watch how it works, how to create a team project, and how to check in the code and how things work. So basically everything is discussed out there. So I'm really not going to spend a lot of time in discussing the same thing again and again. So you can always go back and watch that videos there. So this video is actually going to talk about how this integration stuff works, right? So basically I want to quickly show you how this execute auto employee application looks like. And you can see this is the application execute auto employee, which is nothing but a very simple ASP.NET MVC application. And you can see if you click this employee list, you can see a list of employees coming in, right? And then you can also do a login operation and logout operation for this application. And you can, once you log into this application, you can see that it will bring up some new menus in there. And then you can also do a log off if you want to, whatever you want to do, everything comes in, right? And then basically this application can be tested with one of the Selenium framework which we developed in our Udemy's automation course. This is nothing but an automation framework development with Selenium C#. It's an advanced course available in Udemy.com, where you can see how we have created our framework from the scratch, from the ground up basically. And you can see what is this framework and how to develop this framework and how to actually create a different components for this framework and developing the configuration components, extension components, refactoring it. And also you can see there is a section which deals with deploying the employee app to Internet Information Server. So all these things you can basically learn about the Selenium framework in this video series. So again, I'm not really going to talk about the framework itself, right? So I'm not going to talk about the application development and of how this application is being developed. Rather, you can see there is a source code for this application. If you go to the Solution Explorer, you can see that I have this application up and running right here. So this is the execute auto employee application. It's a ASP.NET application, and here it has a controllers, and it will have some of the models because it's an MVC application. And you can see all the code for this application is actually sitting right here. So what I'm going to basically do is I'm going to just mimic a little bit like a developer and tester here. So I will make some changes in there in the application, and then I will check in the code, and then I will see whether the test fails, right? Which is great. And then I will also do a modification once again, and then make a check-in. And once I check in and run the build, then automatically the test should pass, right? That's the expectation. So all these things are going to happen in a continuous integration way of build, deploy, and test using Team Foundation Server 2015. And you can see we have this EA Auto framework, which actually the framework for our Selenium, and these are the different kinds of codes and components available within this framework, which helps to write some of the test cases which is available in here. And you can see this is the employee test case, very simple test case to perform some of the operation. And we also have spec flow scenarios here, where you can see how this employee application is being tested. So this is what is the very simple scenario, which is nothing but a spec flow scenario to perform the operation of executing the test cases for the application that you have seen right here, right? So basically this test case is dealing with opening the application and creating a user, and then verifying whether the user has been created or not, right? So these are the different kinds of stuffs we're going to do in this course of video series. So we will talk about the application deployment in the Internet Information Server, and then running the test based on the test cases that we have written in our test cases in our EA employee test in the upcoming video. So thank you very much for watching this video, and have a great day. Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I'm from ExecuteAutomation.com, and this is part 4 of our automated build deploy test with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium. And this video series is a part of our ALM with Team Foundation Server video series. And in this video, we'll be talking about building our application and Selenium framework check-in to team system. And this is part 2 of our video. So for understanding what is there in part 2, I'm going to flip to Visual Studio. Alright, so this is the same project which we worked in our previous video, and what we saw in our previous video is that in the source controller we actually have the application and the test framework and the test cases, right? So what is the actual test case which is sitting inside our automation framework? So if you see the test cases which is available in our test project, this is the test case which is available. Employee login feature, very simple feature. It has like navigating to the website, and then actually we are navigating to the application and we are seeing if the login page exists, and if the login page exists, then we are clicking the login link, and then we are entering the username and password, and then we are seeing the login has happened or not. And then if you see the application, this is the application that we're going to really automate, and this application has a login link, and if you click this, it will bring you up the username and password field, and if you hit the login, it will basically log in and it will show you a hello admin as the information there, right? So this is pretty much a very fairly simple test case we got to see whether the login is really happening or not, right? So actually, in this video series, we're really going to talk about how to actually perform a continuous integration or the build, deploy, test workflow with Team Foundation Server 2015 itself, not how to write the test cases with Selenium or how to build the application. That's why I'm really not really focusing on how to do all these stuffs in a greater detail, right? So if you really want to understand how this Selenium automation stuff works, basically there are a lot of video series available in Execute Automation channel to basically hook around and see how these things works, right? All right, great. So what are we really going to do in this video then? Basically, I'm going to check in the changes in our team system, and then I'm going to see how this thing works, right? So for performing a last operation here, once I click the login operation is going to happen, and then I need to verify whether the hello admin is actually available or not. So verify the hello admin link, right? So this code is actually I have written in my scenario, and you can see I should see the username with hello. So if I go to the step definition, you can actually see this code. Very simple and simple code. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to reuse this code instead of me writing a lot of code there. All right, so there's an if condition. What is this? Okay, no problem. Right, so this is the code which I did. So I'm going to save this. Basically, once you do a save and then if you build the solution, it should work fine without any problem, and make sure that the test also execute without any problem, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this test and see if the test case passes without any problem. So I'm going to head over to the test explorer, and you can see that there is a test method called employee login feature. So I'm going to run this selector test. So this is going to open the browser and it's going to navigate to the application. So it's navigating and it should click the login link now. Yep, it is clicking. It's also entering the username and password, and it should verify the hello admin, and we should see the user. Oh my god, so this test case is actually failing, and it says that's good. So there is a null reference exception in there. So the null reference exception is happening because we're not going to use we're not actually using the current page. Oh, there we go. So we're actually using the page object here. So I'm going to paste that. All right, that's good. This is how we can verify whether our code is really working or not. So I'm going to run the selector test once again and make sure that my test case is actually working fine without any null pointer exceptions that you are seeing right now here. So it opened the browser, it's logging in, There we go. And now if we go to the test explorer, the test got passed, which is great. And if you see the output, all the tests got passed, success login, right? So this is the working test case that we got. We have added some changes in here, and let's say we have built something, not much here. And then if we go to the team explorer, and if we go to the pending changes, you can see that the file which we have modified, the employee test case.cs, should appear. There we go, it is there. And then we need to give a comment here, added verification logic, right? Very simple logic though. And then I'm going to check in, and it has created a chain set for us for the check-in that we have made. And you can also see these codes in our Team Foundation server. So if I go to my Team Foundation server, basically the login, and then if I go to my employee web application, and if I go right here, you can see that I have my homepage. These new homepage dashboards will actually appear if you update your Team Foundation server to update 1, right? And then if you go to this code, and if you go to your EA test project, or sorry, the EA employee test, and if you go to the EA employee test case.cs, there's a very lightweight editor available with the Visual Studio Team Foundation Server 2015 web edition. And you can see you can also do an editing operation here as well, and you can also do a check-in if you want to. So here you can see that the code changes that you have made in the project is actually appearing, right? So this is how you can perform a code check-in, check-out, and building of your application using Team Foundation Server 2015. Of course, this is not a very great thing that I have showed you, but just to prove the concept that we are also doing a build operation with Team Foundation Server 2015. That's it, guys. So thank you very much for watching this video, and have a great day. Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I'm from ExecuteAutomation.com. And this is part 5 of our automated build deploy test with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium. And in this part, we'll be talking about deploying application and Selenium framework from Team Foundation Server 2015 in local machine. So before watching this part, I would request you to watch part 4, since this part will have some similarities and continuation from those parts. And please keep in mind that this video series is a part of our ALM with Team Foundation Server. So let's get started. Deployment logic in local machine. So deployment of our application and Selenium framework in our local machine can be done using 2 ways. One is by creating a build definition using XAML, or by creating a build definition with vNext build definitions. So we are actually going to use vNext build definition in this whole video series. We'll not be talking about XAML build definition ever in this video series, since vNext is the future of Team Foundation Server, and Team Foundation Server 2015 has this cool feature of vNext build definition. So why not just go with that? So I'm not going to use XAML build definition ever in this video series at all. So vNext build definition it is. So what is the checklist for our deployment? So basically, before starting to deploy our application and the test framework and to create a continuous integration, we need to somehow have a checklist for the deployment. And the checklist is this. So we're going to deploy our application to a internet information server. So that's what is the first thing which we need to do. So once we build our application source code, we need to deploy that into our IIS. And then we also need to deploy our database that we have created that is associated with our application. As you can see in the SQL Server, we have a database for our application, which is nothing but our employee DB. And this application has the tables which is required for our application to perform operations normally. So this also has to be deployed. And then we also have to execute the test cases that we have created in our test project. So these are the most important things that we need to do while doing a deployment of our application, as well as executing the test cases while creating the build definition in vNext. So these are the checklist, right? And then let's create a vNext build definition in our Team Foundation Server 2015 web edition. So before creating the vNext build definition, the most important thing which we need to do, of course, you will not realize why we have to do this, is this. We need to create a published profile within our application for deploying in Internet Information Server. So without having this published profile, we will have a very hard time to actually deploy our application. So if you don't know what this web application deployment is all about for ASP.NET application, please go to Google, just search for the web application deployment using the publish profile in ASP.NET, and you will find a lot of articles about it. But we're not really going to discuss about that by Googling it. Rather, we'll directly talk about in action. So for that, I'm going to flip to Visual Studio. So this is the same project which we worked in our last two videos, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a publish profile. Again, what is this publish profile is all about? So once your application is built, basically the built application will have just the binaries of the application. So if you go to the Solution Explorer and if you just open the folder in Explorer, you can see the application execute auto employee will appear, and there is a bin folder, and this is the actual application's source code which is going to be deployed along with some of these configuration files into your Internet Information Server, which you can see here, www.root, and you can see the actual bin files that you saw in the application directory, and these are some of the contents and the web configurations file which is required for making your application up and running like this, right? So if you want to deploy this into your Internet Information Server, so again, Internet Information Server is something which makes my application up and running. And if you go here to the Internet Information Server, you can see there is a sites and there is a default website, and this is what is my application, which is hosted into this IIS, and this is what makes my application up and running. So we need to automatically deploy this into the IIS, right? So how to do this? Basically, not just copy pasting the file will actually create that. There is something like bindings, and you also need to enable the browsing of the directories. So all these things you can do very, very simply using the publish profile, which is available with Visual Studio. So you can create a lot of publish profiles. One is for the release, one is for the debug, and one for the testing, one for the production, one for the staging. You can create a lot of publish profiles basically, but I'm not going to really deal with creating a lot of publish profiles. Rather, I'm going to just create only one profile, only one publish profile, which can be used for deploying my application into the Internet Information Server, both locally as well as in a remote machine. So we'll talk about deploying the application in a distributed machine while we talk about that in the next video. But as of now, we're going to just deploy in our local machine. So how to deploy the application in local machine? Basically, it's very, very simple. So if you just right click the execute auto employee ASP.NET MVC application, there is something called publish. So if you click this option, you will have this new window coming in. I have already created a release publish profile, and you can see what I have created. Basically, I've given a name for this profile, and in the connection, I have changed the publish method to web deploy package. So this is basically going to create a package for me into this folder. So if I just copy paste this folder location in the run, you can see these are the files which is automatically created for me. And this is a zip version of our application. If you just open this, and you can see the content, and you can see the actual application which is built using the agent. And here we go. Here's the package. This is the file that you saw in www.root, and this is exactly what is going to be deployed, right? And this is the package location, and this is my site name. Remember, in Internet Information Server, we have something called default website, right? And that's the name of the site that I have given here as well. And then in the settings, I'm actually giving the database connectivity to create a database for me in the database that I have, the SQL Server database. So that's the connectivity that I have given right here. And then there's a preview which just says that this is what it's going to do. And then if you do a publish, this will basically do a publishing of your application into this folder. And if you want to see how this publish actually works, location right here, and you can see the date and time is 22nd, but actually today is 23rd, right? 23rd February. And now if I do a publish, you can see that the publish has started, and it is basically publishing the application into that particular folder. And you can see it is picking up all the files required for building the application, and it is creating a package. There we go, it has created. And now if I go to my release folder, you can see it's all 23, meaning today's date. So it has just created a very simple applications release zip, so that this is the zip file or the release folder that you can ship with any of your team members or even to the client who can actually deploy your application into Internet Information Server. And again, if you ask me how to deploy the application into Internet Information Server, it is very simple. You can see there is a release.deploy readme text, and it has a very simple command line parameters where you can use for deploying your application into your local machine. Well, how to do this? I'm going to show you that very quickly. So I'm going to open the command prompt and I'm going to run as an administrator, and here I'm just going to go and type release.deploy.cmd/y, and this means I'm going to install it into my Internet Information Server. So you can see that the latest and the greatest change of my application is right there into my Internet Information Server www root, and it's all deployed. And you can see the only change it has did is the 23, the web.config. That's it. So meaning the latest file is deployed into my local machine. Well, how to achieve this using the vNext build definition? That's the question. That's how we're going to do with our Team Foundation Server 2015. So what I'm going to do, I will go right here to my Team Foundation Server, and I will go to this build tab, and this build tab actually has the build definitions and build management, all those stuff. So this is the build definition I got, and I have run so many tests for my application to make sure my application is stable. And I'm going to show you how to create a very simple build definition. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to click this add button. This will bring me up a build definition template. And again, these videos we have already discussed while talking about Team Foundation Server build system in our Execute Automation video channel. So you can just go ahead and watch a complete video of that and have exclusive videos of how this build definitions and build system works, right? So I'm going to quickly create a build definition using the vNext, and I'm going to select the Visual Studio. I'm not going to select anything else and hit OK. And this will basically bring a template of stuffs right here. So I'm really not going to do any testing as of now, the UI testing in my local machine, because that I'm going to do while working with the distributed testing, right? So I'm going to just remove some of the stuffs right here, even this one. And this is the only thing which I'm going to keep. And here in the solution, I'm basically going to select the employee web application and the solution. So I'm going to select this solution, the Execute Auto employee solution. And I'm going to just save this build. And let's give this a name here, build deploy test. And hit OK. All right, great. And then if I do a queue new build, it will actually build the application. But I'm not really interested in just building it yet. I'm going to deploy that and publish that into my Internet Information Server. So for that, I'm also need to add some of the comments. So I basically need to add some of the MS build arguments right here. So before adding all these stuffs, let's not confuse a lot here, and let's take this to next video. So thank you very much for watching this video and have a great day. Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I'm from ExecuteAutomation.com, and this is part 6 of our automated build deploy test with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium. So in this part, we'll be talking about deploying our application and Selenium framework from Team Foundation Server 2015 in local machine. So before watching this part, I would request you to watch part 4 and 5, since this part is going to be a continuation of those two parts. Alright, so for that, I'm going to flip to Team Foundation Server. Alright, so in the last video, we just stopped right here saying there's so many things that we discussed. So the last thing which I'm going to do, maybe the last couple of things which I'm going to do to make this deployment happen in our Internet Information Server is to add the MS build arguments. Again, this MS build argument is basically one of the build argument that you can add while compiling your build, so that you can tell, hey, MS build, just pick up the publish profile that I got in my application and execute that, and then create the release.debug.cmd file that we saw right here. So I want it to build this kind of zip file for me. So remember, in our last video, we were just right clicking it and we were just hitting this publish, and then we were clicking this publish button, which is kind of pain, which you cannot do in your Team Foundation Server every time. Rather, you want to make this happen automatically, and this you can do using your MS build arguments, which is kind of great, right? So how to do this? Very, very simple. You need to actually add some of the parameters in the ms build argument right here. And the argument is this. I'm just going to copy this argument. It is nothing but this. I'm just going to paste it right here. It is /p:/deploy on build is equal to true, /p is equal to publish profile is equal to release. Great. So this is the only argument that I'm going to add, and then I'm going to just save this build definition. And the last thing which I'm going to add is, remember I showed a command prompt where I just added the release.command.cmd/y, which was actually responsible for deploying the code into your Internet Information Server. So that we need to add. So how do we actually add that? So basically it is nothing but running a batch file, right? That's what it was doing. Baby, that's the most important thing that you can do in your Team Foundation server workflow is by clicking this add build step. And here you can go to the utility, and here you can choose a variety of options where you can tell that you want to run this. So basically I'm going to say I want to run a command line. So that command line is something which we saw in our previous video, right? So basically I'm going to tell that I want to run the release tool and with some of the argument, which is nothing but the /y, right? So that's the argument that we need to add. So what I'm basically going to do is I'm just going to copy this particular location, right? And then I'm going to specify a command here, which is nothing but the /y. The /y is nothing but the command to execute or deploy application into our Internet Information Server, right? So I'm going to just save this and I'm going to hit OK. So this will basically execute the application. It will just build the application, and also it will create a zip file or the release file into my specified location, and then it will execute from the command prompt and deploy that into my Internet Information Server. So let's quickly run and see how this thing works. So for doing that, I'm going to click this Q new build, and it will ask me to select the build agent from the queue or the pool. So I'm going to select the default because that's where my agent is actually available, and you can see that it is building the application right now very, very easily, and it's going to synchronizing the repositories. So the first time it's going to pick up the complete application, and it also has to restore the NuGet packages or the NuGet packages from the website. So as you can see, it is restoring the NuGet packages, and it's adding the packages for our project which is required. All right, did you see it has created the release.zip as well in the log file? So it is creating as release.zip with the help of the publish profile that we added, the command that we added there. And now it is running a simple command to execute. So you can see that, and the build got succeeded. And if you go to the www root, so the latest file is actually updated right here. Right, so this is how you can create a very, very simple build definition for deploying the application into your local Internet Information Server or local machine using this build definition of vNext in Team Foundation Server 2015. So in the next video, we'll actually work with deploying your application in a remote machine with a very simple command change so that you can make the same thing happens in a remote machine, right? So that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video, and have a great day. Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I'm from ExecuteAutomation.com, and this is part 7 of our automated build deploy test with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium. So in this part, we'll be talking about deploying application and Selenium framework from Team Foundation Server 2015 in a remote machine. So before watching this part, I would request you to watch part 6, since in that part we deployed application and Selenium framework from Team Foundation Server 2015 in a local machine, and this video is going to be a continuation of that video. So this video series is a part of our ALM with Team Foundation Server video series. Alright, so let's get started. So for that, I'm going to flip to Team Foundation Server. So in the last video, we were trying to deploy our application in our local Internet Information Server, and we saw how to do that using the Visual Studio Build and the command line tool. So this time we're going to make a little changes here and there And the only change which I'm going to do to deploy in a remote machine is by changing the command line argument that we did in the release.deploy.cmd. So there is an additional command, as we already saw in the previous video, where you can pass the parameters like the machine name, the username, and the password, so that you can easily deploy the application in a remote machine, which you can see from here in the release.deploy.readme.txt. Here you can say the command and /y for installation, and /m for the computer name, /u for the username of the machine, the remote machine, and /p is the password for the remote machine. So if you specify that, then application will be deployed into that particular remote machine's internet information server. So first of all, we need to see how our remote machine is going to look like. So I'm going to open the Hyper-V virtual machine manager, and I have already Windows 8.1 running in the remote machine. So I'm just going to connect that particular machine, and it's going to ask me the screen resolutions, and it's going to connect there. And I'm going to sign in as an administrator this time, because administrator have all the privileges to install the test agents and all those stuffs, so which we'll be discussing in upcoming videos. So I'm going to log in as an administrator this time. And this is the Windows 8.1 machine, and if you go to the C colon, and if you go there to the inet pub www root, you can see there is an applications configurations file as well as the application's actual files, which is required for making your application up and running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy the files from a remote machine to this machine. So in this case, the remote machine is going to be our server 2012 R2, which is our host machine, and this is our guest machine. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to delete all the files. So right now I don't have any files in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make little changes in my existing build definition by adding some additional arguments. Right? And then I have added the machine name, the username, and the password there. And I'm just going to save this build definition, and I'm going to say enable remote deployment. And I'm going to hit OK. I'm just going to queue the build. So I'm going to hit OK. So if I run this build definition right now, instead of deploying my application in a local machine, it's going to deploy in the remote machine, and you can see side by side what's going to happen. So right now in the side, I have Windows 8.1 machine up and running, and the build server is also running, which is nothing but our Team Foundation server. All right, now you can see that the files is starting to copy there. So all the files from my Team Foundation server is being copied to my remote machine, which is nothing but my Windows 8.1 machine, and the build got succeeded. And now if you open your application in this machine, you can see that the machine will just open like how you open in your Windows Server 2012 R2 machine as well. So I'm just going to navigate to the local host, and you can see that my application will open in this machine. All right, so now as you can see, the application has completely opened in my Windows 8.1 machine, and now you can do exactly what you did in our Windows Server 2012 R2 machine as well. So this is how you can deploy your application in a remote machine's internet information server using your build definitions. So that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video, and have a great day. Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I'm from executeautomation.com, and this is part 8 of our automated build deploy test with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium video series. And in this part, we'll be talking about testing our application and Selenium framework from Team Foundation Server 2015 in a remote machine. So before watching this part, I would request you to watch part 6 and 7, since this part is going to be a continuation of those two parts. Well, this video series is a part of our ALM with Team Foundation server video series. Alright, so let's get started. So before jumping into testing in a remote machine, first of all, let's understand the concept of our continuous integration. So continuous integration is a development practice that requires developers to integrate code into a shared repository several times a day, which is something you might have encountered most of the time. While continuous integrations, like a lot of tools are available like Jenkins, Hudson, Team Foundation Server, JIT, all of them are of course available, and how to do that in our local machine and how these things are working. But understanding the concept of continuous integration is kind of important in this video, since what we're going to deal with right now is a kind of continuous integration. It's not even kind of continuous integration, but it's close to continuous integration. So each check-in is then verified by a automated build, allowing team to detect problem early. And you can see that the word automated is bolded, and the reason is that's exactly what we are about to achieve in this video. So automated testing in remote machine is kind of very important. It's a dream for most of the automation test engineers. They want their tests to be up and running every time without even triggering them. So they want the automated test to happen automatically instead of just going and manually triggering the automation test every time once the build is ready. So you might have noticed in your companies that there will be a lot of nightly builds running. So every night the application will be automatically built by the continuous integration system, and that will be deployed in a machine, and your test should run on that particular nightly build, and the report of the testing should be sent to the respective team members. In the morning, once you log into a machine, you'll see the report. So that's a dream of most of the people in a automation testing world, and also the developer's dream, while they don't have to see a negative or a red color mark in the report every time after doing a lot of development. So that's exactly what we're going to do this time. So we are going to run automated build after every check-in or while queuing a new build. And for doing that, we need following build tasks to be added in the build definitions. So I'm going to talk about some build task here. Suddenly I'm bringing in a new word here, but the build task is something which we have already discussed while we were discussing in our previous video, like adding command prompts and while trying to copy some of the files from our local machine to a Hyper-V machines. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. So what are the things that we need to do? So these are the build tasks that we need to achieve or add before starting to deploy our test in a remote machine and run the test in a remote machine. So the build tasks are this. The first thing is building our application. Of course, we have to build our application every time once the check-in is done, or maybe you're queuing a new build. So the build application is an important task. And then we need to deploy the application in a remote machine. So we saw these two actions or tasks in our previous videos itself. So these two are kind of very important. Only then we can run the test on them, right? And then we have to copy paste the test project DLLs, and here comes our Selenium automation frameworks testing. So we have to copy all the Selenium's libraries and some of the test adapters. If you're using some custom test adapters, you need to also copy that, and then you have to run the or copy the test DLLs, which holds the test method attributes. Those DLLs also has to be copied into the remote Hyper-V machines or remote network machines. So that's the another task. And then we need to install the test agent in the remote machine. So I'm saying test agent here. So without test agent, it won't run. So without test agent, the Team Foundation server will not really understand how to run the test in a remote machine. So this test agent is kind of very important. So before Team Foundation Server 2015 vNext build definitions, there was something called XAML build definition, which we already discussed in our Team Foundation Server build system in a separate playlist of YouTube channel, where we discussed about XAML. But the thing what I'm going to say is, in those kind of situations, you also have to have a test agent and controller setup. So that's kind of very nagging, because there you also have to have your complete test agent installed before you start running the test. But here in our vNext build definition, you don't even have to install the test agent before running this build definition itself. Your build definition task will automatically install the test agent once you define it. So that's kind of very easy thing. So it will run some PowerShell script and installs the test agent in the remote machine, and then it will start the test automatically. So the last step is, of course, you understand what it is. we have to run the test using the test agent which we installed. So these are the build tasks that we need to add in our build definitions. So the build task versus the build steps. So we were talking about the build task in our previous slide, and the build steps is something which we add in our build definitions. So let's compare both of them. So this build application and the deploy application in remote machine, remember we did both of them using Visual Studio build task. And similarly, copy and pasting the test project DLL can be done using Windows machine file copy build step. And that's the task that you need to add in your build definition. And similarly, install test agent in remote machine. So that particular build step can be done using Visual Studio test agent deployment task. So you need to add that task in your build definition. Similarly, running test using test agent. So that build step you can perform using Visual Studio test using test agent task. So we need to add these respective tasks in our build definition steps. So that's exactly what we're going to do right now. And before finishing this video slide, the most important thing which we also need to understand is the machine groups. So there is something called machine groups in Team Foundation Server 2015, which you can add all your machines in your network and then you can group them. So that let's say if you want to run your test in 5 different machines with Chrome, Firefox and IE in each browser running, then you can group them as a cross-browser machines. Similarly, if you want to run some kind of configurations in a specific group, then you can name that as that machine group name and then you can group all those machines. So machine groups is kind of very helpful while running your automation test in multiple machine same time parallelly. So that's exactly what we're going to do in this video as well. So in the next video, we will actually talk about a real implementation of all these theoretical steps, whatever we discussed right now. So that's it guys. Thank you very much for watching this video and have a great day. Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I'm from ExecuteAutomation.com, and this is part 9 of our automated build deploy test with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium. So in this video, we'll be talking about testing application and Selenium framework from Team Foundation Server 2015 in a remote machine. And this video is a continuation of part 8. So before watching this part, I would request you to watch part 8 since this part is going to be fully dependent on that part. So this video series is a part of ALM with Team Foundation Server's video series. Alright, so let's flip to Team Foundation Server. So in the last video, we were discussing how to achieve the build steps like this, and we discussed what each and every build task is and how to associate the build task with the build definition steps like this, right? So we're going to do that, but before jumping in there, we'll first talk about the machine groups. So the machine groups is something which group the machines based on a specific task. Let's say if you're going to run some kind of test, let's say cross-browser testings for each and every browsers in a different environments, then you can group those machines as a cross-browser machines. Let's say if you want to run some test for a specific configuration, then you can group those machines in those specific configurations. So for doing these kinds of group of machines, you can create a machine groups, and these machine groups sits in the test tab. So just click this test, and there you have a machines tab. Just click the machines tab. And here you can see there is a all machine groups. So these are the different kinds of group which I have created already in my Team Foundation server. And you can see that this my machine group, if I just double click this, you can see that it has a group name and the description and also the username and password and what is the fully qualified domain name for this machine or the IP address of this machine and which port you are allowing from the Windows Server 2012 R2 through the machine that you have specified in the IP address, right? So you can specify the username and password for this machine so that you don't have to enter the credential while you talk with that machine. So you can add any number of machines here by just clicking this add machines, and you can keep on adding number of machines in this group, right? But currently I'm just going to work with only one machine, which is super enough for my resource that I have in my laptop, because if I keep on adding more and more machines, surely my machine's RAM will run out and even my server cannot even run. That's why I have created only one machine, the Hyper-V machines that you saw in our previous video, this is the Hyper-V machine which runs Windows 8.1. So this is the only virtual machine I got, and I'm running that right here, right? So I'm going to click this cancel, and let me go to the build. So this is the concept of the machine groups. Please keep in mind that a machine group is kind of important, and we are going to use the machine groups while we work with different steps of the build definitions. So let me go to the build deploy test build definitions and click this edit. And as you know, in the step that we discussed right here, we have to add these kind of tasks for the build definition steps. And some of the steps are like build application and deploy application on remote machines, and this can be done using this Visual Studio build task. And similarly, copying and pasting the test projects DLL, that can be done using this Windows machine file copy. Add this task as well. And similarly, we have to add the Visual Studio test agent deployment and Visual Studio test using test agent. So let's quickly add each of them one by one, right? So for that, again, I'm going to flip to Team Foundation server. All right, just hit this add build step, and this will bring you the add tasks option. And here you can search for the Windows machine file copy, and that is actually available under, I think it's there in the deploy, right? So in the deploy, you have this Windows machine file copy. So just add this task. And then we also have to add two more tasks. The one is deploying the test agent and then running the test agent. So this is available under this test tab. So just click this test tab, and there you can see the Visual Studio test agent deployment. Just add this task. And then we have Visual Studio test using test agent. So this task will run the test in the test agent. So I need to add this task as well. So I'm going to hit add, and I'm going to click close. So these are the different kinds of tasks for our build definition, right? And you can see these are in red color bold. The reason is because some of the mandatory fields are not yet filled, and that's why it is in a bold red color. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add the source for this particular for this Windows machine file copy, so that it can copy those files in my remote machine, right? So what is the source for the test where I'm going to run? So basically the test files source is going to be my DLL file, which sits in the bin and the debug folder, right? So I'm going to choose my project, and if I click this, and if I go to my EA employee test, and here I have my test sitting in. So I'm going to select this guy, and I'm going to hit OK. And I know within this project, I'm basically interested in the bin and the debug folders files, right? So I'm going to copy all the files within this debug folder. And then we need to choose the machine groups. So the machine group is something which we already created in the test tab of the machines. So I'm going to select the machine group, and I'm going to work with my machines. So I'm going to select the my machines. This is the group which I'm interested in. And then you can also select the machines by the tag name if you have specified, which I don't have yet. So I'm going to leave it as it is. And then the destination folder. All right, so the destination folders is the place where you have to drop all your files that you have in the source. So I'm going to drop all the files in my virtual machines. Let's say, I think I have already created a folder called autotest. Yeah, this one, autotest. So this is empty right now, and this is C:autotest. So this is the place of my remote machine where I need to copy all the files. So I'm going to just give C:autotest. Great. So this is going to be the folder where I'm going to actually copy the files. And you can also specify clean target. So every time before you copy the files, you can clean the remote machine's target location, and then you can perform the operation. So you can also check this if you want to. So let it be. And then within this advanced, you can also say copy files in parallel, which is like parallel execution. This is also possible. So I'm going to just leave this as it is for now. So this particular task step is completely done. So this is the different configurations that you need to make for your Windows machine file copy. And next is the Visual Studio test agent deployment. So you need to deploy your test agent into your remote machine. That you need to do again. So this test agent, if you ask me, do you need to install this manually, or do you have to have an internet connectivity for that? Of course, yes, you need to have the internet connectivity, because if you don't have the test agent locally in your remote machine, then you need to have internet connectivity in both local machine as well as in the remote machine. So I can also show a trick where you can specify the test agent in a shared folder so that you can install from there. But again, you need to download that first of all, and then you can specify that, right? So I'm going to choose the test machine group, and the machine group is again my machines. So I'm going to select that, and you can specify the filter criteria if you want to, but I don't have to. And then the agent configuration. So the agent has to be installed in that machine with some credentials, right? Again, it's going to be my administrator credentials. So I'm going to specify EA/, which is nothing but my domain, and I'm going to install with the administrator credential. So administrator, and then I need to specify the password, right? So I have specified the password. If you don't want to show your password, you can also specify that in a variables, and then you can perform the operation. You can just specify the argument which can bring you the password there, right? And then the interactive process. This checkbox is pretty important. So let's say if you're going to run the UI testings like Selenium, that what we're going to do right now, you need to make this as interactive process. So if you enable this, only then your browser window will be displayed, else it will be running behind the scene. So you need to check this box, else it won't run the browser UI kind of testing and your test will fail. So make sure that you check this checkbox. And the last option is the advanced option, where you can specify the test agent location. So if you know where your test agent is already downloaded and available in your machine, then specify the path of the particular machine. Actually, I have that file in my server, which is nothing but my machine. So I can specify the shared folder location. It's vstf test.exe, testagent.exe, right? So I have specified that. And here there is a checkbox like update test agent. So if you think that you need to update the test agent before starting to deploy, or if it is there already and still you want to update the test agent, then you can check this box. So I'm going to uncheck this box for now, because I don't want to update this every time, because it's going to slow down my build execution. So I'm going to uncheck this, and then I'm going to save this particular build definition, but currently I cannot save it because one more step has to be completed. So I'm going to go there. This is nothing but the Visual Studio test using test agent. So I will head out there, and then I will just select the machine group for now, so that mandatory fields will be done. And the test drop location. So the test drop location is once again going to be this c:/autotest/ea employee test/bin/debug. So remember, in the Windows machine file copy, we specified the ea test/bin/debug, and exactly the same thing it is. So I have specified that here, because in that machine, this is the location where my test is going to sit. So I'm going to save this for now, and I'm going to give a comment here saying remote test deployment, and I'm going to hit OK. So we'll talk more about running this test in the next video of this video series. So stay tuned, and thank you very much for watching this video, and have a great day. Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I'm from executeautomation.com, and this is part 10 of our automated build deploy test with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium. And in this video we'll be talking about testing application and Selenium framework from Team Foundation Server 2015 in a remote virtual machine. So before watching this part, I would request you to watch part 8 and 9, since this part is going to be a complete continuation of those two parts. And this video series is a part of ALM with Team Foundation Server video series. Alright, so let's get started. So for that, I'm going to flip to Team Foundation Server. So this is the builds definition that we created in our previous video, which is nothing but part 9. And we just left here saying there were so many configurations we made, and we can discuss more about that in the next video. And this is the next video. And we just left over here by creating the build definitions for Visual Studio build, command line, Windows machine, file copy, Visual Studio test agent deployment, and Visual Studio test using test agent. So we did these many different kinds of tasks to be added in the build definitions, and we just left here. So what are we going to do in this video then? Finally, we need to run and see whether the test works in our virtual machine or not, right? So we know that we have a auto test, which is nothing but the drop folder in the remote machine. So we need to run the test or the test project's test in that particular remote machine. So let's see how it works. We are going to copy some of the files from the Windows machine right here. So there is a Windows machine file copy task where it copies all the DLL files from the bin folder, and it's going to drop it into the C:auto test folder of the remote machine, this folder of the Windows 8.1 machine. If we go here to the Visual Studio Test using test agent, we need to run the test from that particular machine, right? So C:auto test it is not the EA auto test /bin/debug. So I'm just going to remove them. And then there is the next line that is kind of important. It says the test assembly, which is **/*test**.dll. So meaning whichever file is available within a folder structure after this, just choose the DLL with test in it. But if you go to my project and if you see what is the DLL of my project, it is actually capital T. It is not just small t that you can specify. It should be capital T so that you can identify this DLL. So if you know how these DLLs are being formed for each and every project, if you go to the bin folder and the debug folder, you can see the employee test is actually sitting in EA employee capital TEST.dll. So this is the DLL file which is responsible for having all my test cases whichever I have created in my projects, which is nothing but employee test case.cs. So this is the one, right? I just have only one test case for now to execute. I'm not executing the spec flow scenario as of now, right? So I need to execute that test case. So how to do it? I need to just change this a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to change this to capital TEST*.dll, right? And then I'm going to save this build definition and I'm going to say made changes to test DLL identification, and then I'm going to hit OK. So the build definition is ready right now. So shall we run this and see? Let's see how it works. So I'm going to queue this new build and it's going to ask me which pool I'm going to take. So I'm going to take the default pool and I'm going to hit OK. So this is going to start executing my test. And as you can see, the first thing it's going to do is it's also going to deploy the application in my IIS server. So let's go to the c::inetpub www.root and let's delete these files and see if it's also deploying the application. There we go. And as you can see, it is also deploying the application in our remote machine. So this stuff is also working. And then it should also perform the copy of the files which is responsible for performing the testing operation in my auto test folder. Let's see if this file has been copied. Hey, there we go. So this file has also been copied. Now it's trying to deploy the test agent in the my machines group, which is nothing but my Windows 8.1 machine. Let's see if it is really deploying the test agent. Of course, the test agent is already installed in this machine. For the time reason, I have already installed in this machine because it's take a lot of time and it also restarts the virtual machine a lot of time. So I just installed this already. So as you can see, it is also running some kind of task there and it's checking whether the test agent is there already or not. So this task is also passed. The last task is to run the test on the remote machine. So as you can see, there is some task engine.exe something, and also it's trying to run the test. And you can see that it says in progress state. Now the test should launch and it also should open the browser and perform the interactive operations. Remember, in our previous video, we set the test agent to be an interactive process so that the browser will open and then the test will execute. If you just don't check the interactive process, then the browser won't execute. I mean, the browser won't open and the execution will fail, because ours is an UI test. All right, so it opened the browser. So let me make this a little bigger All right, so now it went to the home page of the application. Now we should click the login link. There we go, it clicked the login, and it also should enter the username and password. Seems like there is some problem and it just stopped. Let's see what is the problem. I know what is the problem for this, and this is because of the synchronization issue. So if you see what is the error, you can see the error report right here. And if I go to this this link, let me just copy this link, and if I go right here and if I paste it, you can see the actual test run in the Run Explorer. And let's open this, and you can see that it is actually expecting for the username text box by ID, but it couldn't. And there is a stack trace as well, and everything is of course available. The issues that you are looking for is actually available in the execution report itself, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to close this, and I'm quickly going to add some of the threading.wait for now, so that we don't have any problem with our code execution. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump to the Visual Studio, and this is my actual employee test case code. And I know what is the reason for the failure, because the application, once it is first deployed in the Internet Information Server, it will actually be very, very slow for the first time. And if you are going to run for the second time, it will actually be very fast, so that it will be loaded in the cache and then it will be very fast. So this is an expected error, because your test is going to be a first time deployed, and this is exactly what's going to happen even in the real-time scenario, where your application will be deployed for the first time every time in the Internet Information Server. So I'm going to add the synchronization in two places. One is while opening the page, and then after clicking the login link. So let me quickly add the code. So I'm just going to add threading.thread.sleep for now. This is not the right idea, but still I'm just going to add for now, and then you can change it in your framework, of course, right? So I'm just going to add them as well. So in two places, great. I'm going to then save it, and now if I saved it, then we need to check in the code, right? So let's go to the Team Explorer, and the only change is in the employee test case. So I'm going to add a comment here, added synchronization code, and then I'm going to check in the code. That's it. So it created a change set 33. All right, and then let me go to the build definition and just do a queue new build. That's it. So simple it is. So this will take care of our automatic building and executing and then deploying the application, and also deploying the test code in a remote machine and then starting the test. So everything is going to be happening behind the scenes automatically. You don't have to do it manually every time. So right now, let's see how the things will work. All right, the browser is in with the home page. Now it's waiting for 5 seconds, and then you should click the login link. All right. And now we should wait for another 5 seconds, and then you should enter the username and password. All right, and now you can see that the username and password is being entered, and the login button is also clicked. So this is how we can perform the automation testing on a remote machine using Team Foundation Server 2015. So if I go to the test tab, and let's go to the run. All right, and you can see that there is a completed test, which is the past one. So if I just open this, so the test got passed, and there is a TRX file, which is nothing but our test report file, and you can see that it shows the report pretty nicely. And since there is no informations in our report, the reason is because our test is not that informative. That's why it is just showing the green color saying the test has got passed. And if you go to the previous runs, like the test which failed in our previous execution, you can also see why the test has failed and what is the reason. So it is of course like a completed state, but it is in a orange color, meaning the test has failed, but the build has successfully completed, right? And remember the one which we just saw before, the same test report, you can get it from here, right? So this is how you can perform running your test in a remote machine using Team Foundation Server's build definition with vNext, right? So in the next video, we'll be discussing about continuous integration by changing a little bit in our application and then running the test, and let's expect the test to fail, right? So that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video and have a great day. Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I'm from ExecuteAutomation.com, and this is part 11 of our automated build deploy test with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium. And in this part, we'll be talking about continuous integration using Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium. So before watching this part, I would request you to watch part 10, since this part is going to be a continuation of that part. And this video series is a part of our ALM with Team Foundation Server video series. Alright, so for performing the continuous integration, let's flip to Team Foundation Server. So in the last video, we were discussing how to perform an automated build deployment and testing the application using Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium. And in this video, we'll be talking a little bit about exactly the same thing. We will be using the same build definitions and we'll be doing exactly the same stuff we did in the previous video. But here, I want to show you what is actually the continuous integration. But of course, in the previous video itself, we saw the concept of continuous integration. We saw how the test executed and how the test got passed while it deployed in a remote machine. But it is not exactly what happened in a real-time scenario. But in real-time scenario, the developer will actually do a code check-in of the application. The automated build will trigger and then it will do a build deployment in the remote machine and then the test will start. So let's do this. As you can see in the Visual Studio, we are expecting for the click login, meaning we are expecting for a login link to be clicked in a remote machine. So let me open the remote machine and let me open the browser and let's go to the localhost. And you can see there is a login link. So we are clicking this login link and only then we are entering the username and password there, right? So if we go to this particular method of the page object model based application that we have written. So if I go to F12, and then I can see that I have identified this control using this home page class, and within this home page class I have a page object model to perform the operation of login, and this LNK login is responsible for clicking the login, right? So let this be aside, and then let's go to my application source code. So I'm going to go to the execute auto employee, and here let's say I'm going to mimic like a developer who is going to do a breaking change in the application. So the login is actually sitting in the, I think it is there in the views, and within the views there is something called shared views, and within shared views we have something called partial view. So within this partial view we have this login action link, and within this action link we have specified the login link, and then there is a model which is going to perform the or the controller method which is going to perform the operation. So I think this is the one which is responsible for that. So I will just change this login to maybe without space login. So this is what your developer is going to do a breaking change, and he's going to save this. Let's quickly run this and see how your UI looks like after the change. So I'm just going to run this in my local machine. So you can see this is running in the IIS Express now. And you can see that the login this time don't have any space in it. So there was a log space in before the link text, right? But right now the link text is without any space in the log and in. It's log in, right? So this test is going to be failing this time. So I'm just going to close it and let's stop the debugging. And right now our test case, if you go to our test case in the employee test case, and let's go to the click login, and within this click login, this login link, and if you can see here, it is actually using the log space in, right? So this is what our test expectation. So what I'm going to do, let's say your developer is going to do a check-in of this code. He's going to do a very breaking change without even telling the tester. Saying breaking change, and you testers, I mean we testers, don't know what is the change going to happen this time in this build. And the check-in has done, and let's say your test is automatically been triggered, which you can do using this trigger operation. So I'm going to check this box continuous integration, and then I'm going to save, and this is going to ask me for some comments there. So let's give a comment saying CI capability added, and I'm gonna hit OK. I'm gonna save this. All right, so it is saved already, and right now the test build definitions should trigger the build, but as of now there is no build trigger because right now we just enabled. Let's go to the builds. So it is not triggered yet. So let's say I'm going to do one more small change and then check in the code. So let's go to the maybe this guy, and let's add a small comment somewhere else just to mimic. I'm gonna save it and added dummy comments to a check-in. There we go. And now your Visual Studio build should automatically trigger a build by now. Let's go to the queued, and you can see that there is a build being triggered. So if I just double click this, you can see that the same exact thing is happening behind the scenes. Let's close this browser. So right now it should do exactly the same thing. It should take the source, it should deploy the test case in a remote machine, and then run the test. All right, now we expect our test to fail actually because the space between the login has been removed. Let's see how our page looks like. There we go, and you can see there is no space within the login, and now our test will super easily fail without identifying the actual control. Yep, there we go. So the test got failed, and now you know in the next morning that there is some breaking change happened in the application, and then the test got failed, right? So you can easily report this to your developer, and even your developer will be in the same page while the build fails, and even he can see the report. So if we go right here, and you can see that the test got failed, and if you just go to the maybe to the test, and then if we go to the runs, and you can see this run ID 43. So this is the latest one which executed. So I'm going to just double click and open this, and you can see it failed, and also you can see what is the report. So you can see this report either online or however you want to. So there is something called as test results. So you can just double click this, and you can see what is the exception. So the exception is the element not found exception, and the exception happened in the line number 27. So there is a stack trace which explains to you that this is the failure. And if you want a offline report, then you can easily see the offline report using the TRX file. So whatever you want to do, you can do using this Team Foundation server's continuous build integration as well. So that's it, guys. So this is the complete video series of our build, deploy, and test using Team Foundation Server 2015 and Selenium. So you can leverage the power of our Selenium automation framework, which we developed and discussed in the Udemy course. So that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching this series, and have a great day.